To me, the question of identity is really deeply rooted, in historical processes and a social organization, of our life. So, for example, workers is an identity, right? And so identity are not something abstract, but they have their roots, in processes, in conditions, that are conditions of exploitation, conditions of labor, conditions that are really rooted in a whole political economic texture. And I believed we cannot speak of identity unless we speak of that thick, in a sense, political economic texture, terrain from which identities are formed. And this is why also, we cannot change our identity unless we also change the material condition of our life. So for example, the transformation, the change the women have made, the feminist movement have made, from the image of woman as the servant of man, the mother, the one who has to necessarily be a mother to be socially accepted, the one who sacrifices herself, who has to put her needs last, the needs of everybody else comes before, all of that. The change of that identity has come, also with a struggle, about the question of domestic work, right? Against the confinement to domestic work, against the devaluation of domestic work. The idea that domestic work is something of a biological activity. We said, no, it's a form of production. Domestic work is actually the production of workers, right? So I think that this is how the change has come. So that, for example, the way my mother thought of woman as an identity and what woman means for me is very different, because the struggle that we have made and the struggle to change not just an identity in the abstract, but the struggle to change the identity throughout a transformation of the material condition of our life, right, has really changed radically what it means to be a woman today. This is not a frozen concept. As with every form of identity, there is nothing that is, given in absolute for all times, but they have an historical context. And that historical content changes with social transformation, with struggles. There is the moment for being all out in the streets, in the protest, and mobilizing and organizing against. And at the same time, this cannot be all. This cannot be all, because unless we change, and this I think is something the feminist movement has intuited and learned from the very beginning, unless we also change the organization of our everyday life, we cannot sustain the struggle. So the struggle cannot be only in terms of powerful moments, which then seem to dissipate. Has to be also a struggle of construction. I think that my polemic or my point was that we cannot struggle unless we also construct something. We cannot change what is there unless we replace it with something different. And also that the struggle that we made, has to transform how we live on an everyday basis. So the fact that one simple example that has always impressed me, in the United States, if you look at the history of the labor movement in the United States, you will see, it's very classical. Every time a labor struggle, a strike, for instance, went beyond, the very traditional union schemes, and it became a struggle of resistance to the end. Those big strikes where workers are putting everything, they are risking everything. Immediately, the everyday life of people changes. How? They begin to work together. They begin to put their life in common. They begin eating together, sharing things, because you are under such an attack that you cannot afford to continue your individual, isolated lives. The life itself of the everyday is transformed. And this is what I'm saying has to happen on a broader basis, an even more conscious basis. In order to sustain a struggle, a long-term struggle with this monstrous regime that is capitalism, we also have to begin to transform the way we organize our day-to-day life. Because the way we organize our day-to-day life is weakens, and this is how capitalism has organized it. Like the nuclear family, the propaganda about individualism, think of yourself, don't think of others, self-interest, right? Is your family, is your husband, is your privacy, all of this, which they're selling us, as a form of liberation, right, is in reality a form of weakening, is a road to defeat. It's only with other people that we begin to expand our imagination about what is possible. It's only with other people that we can overcome the fear, the sense of depression, the desperation, right? And know that we are not alone in the crisis that we live every day. It's with other people that we get the energy through love, affectivity, relation, doing things together, not feeling alone, that we transform and we go another day of struggle. But let me say there are feminist movements. And for instance, it is very clear that in Latin America, in many countries, they are the most powerful feminist movement today across the world, because they are movements that have understood very thoroughly that it's not possible to change positively the condition of women unless we change our society. That it's not possible to change the condition of women without a radical process of transformation, the creation of a society governed by a very different logic than the logic of capitalism, of coloniality, of racism. And I think that, for example, in Argentina, in Mexico, Brazil, we see feminist movement, for instance, that are able to connect issues that are much more related, directly related, to basically transforming, allowing women to have more social power, with issues that have to do with, contrasting the ecological destruction of the world, by connecting with anti-colonial movement, developing an anti-colonial perspective, developing also a feminist reading of economic politics, like, for example, the politics of the World Bank, the politics of the IMF, the use of debt, the political use of indebtedness, right, to create new forms of enslavement through financial means, as for example, the women in Argentina are doing today. I mean, I think there's been a tremendous change. Today, for example, the ability in many parts of the world to have the right to abortion is a big victory, is very important. Without the women's movement, we wouldn't have it. Similarly, the fact that, it's recognized that we have a right to not wanting to be mothers. Already in the mid-1980s, we have seen in the United States the rise of a social movement, for reproductive justice. Mostly a movement of Afro-descendant women who have a whole history of being denied maternity, from slavery, through the decades, through the centuries, and denied maternity not only because of sterilization, but also because of not having the resources to really raise children in a way that is not paid, at the cost of women's life. So in the 80s, Afro-descendant women informing the reproductive justice movement challenged the feminist movement and the idea that the right to abortion is choice. They said it's part of choice. It's one aspect, it's one half of choice. Choice is to be able to decide, do I want to have children or do not want to have children?